Hey, welcome to another edition of the Chiefs Outsiders podcast, where our Kansas City Chiefs are sitting at 4-1, and the Raiders are sitting at 1-4. That three-game difference is something feels pretty familiar as a Chiefs fan, and it's the most important thing. But we're going to get into everything else from the ridiculous call on Chris Jones.
Just terrible.
Hit the biggest key plays, talk offense, defense, special teams, and just what's your number one takeaway after that game's over and we've got the win in the books?
So is I don't think that was the script any of us expected. But I think we got to start with the bad roughing the passer call on Chris Jones. That was just, I think it's the talk of the national media at this point. After we had some bad calls on Sunday that were roughing the passer that impacted games, and then just another one on Monday.
It was absolutely terrible. If you really think about that play, so Jones hits him, the ball immediately comes loose. Now you think at all the things that happen in the time it takes Chris Jones to fall down, that he secures that ball with one hand and still manages to brace himself with the other hand to protect Derek Carr. Just, he could not have done that any better.
And it really was a supremely athletic play by Chris Jones, like you said, to in one motion strip, tackle, recover, and try to brace himself from landing on the quarterback and still get penalized for it.
I didn't understand several things. Now they say it doesn't matter what happens. Like, so if that fumble, that ball just kicks away and is rolling across the field, you can still rough the passer if you land on him. But in that case, there was a clear recovery long before they hit the ground, and the penalty did not happen till after they hit the ground. So it's like a post possession. So if Derek Carr had thrown an interception and then Chris Jones throws him on the ground, the Chiefs keep the ball. Right. Even though that penalty can still be called, it's post possession.
Yeah.
And I mean, that penalty was ridiculous any way you slice it. And, Kansas City was in a stretch right there where they scored on 6 or 7 consecutive possessions, and they would have had the ball at midfield with 2 minutes left. Really cost them. And if they'd lost that game, I really would be fuming about that.
Yeah, no kidding. And I think we agree that this was just start to finish a poorly officiated game on both sides. I thought there were some poor spots that benefited both teams. I thought there were some questionable calls that hurt and benefited both teams. And that's, again, not even mentioning that Chris Jones play, which was the biggest bad call of the game.
Chris Jones was really good in his post game. I think I'm gonna mess it up exactly how he said it, but like that he said this is a Christian game, so he's gonna pray about it. And that
he said the NFL was fat shaming because he's 300 pounds. What's he supposed to do?
Yeah. Yeah, if he wasn't so big, it wouldn't have been roughing.
Right.
And then the main thing he said, besides the fact that he's a funny guy and jokes around, is that the league needs to look at this. And if you're going to have these types of calls determining games, then it should be reviewable, especially every turnover's reviewed. And a turnover happened. They have to look at that, but they didn't look at it. They ignored the fact that the ball was fumbled.
And as good as it sounds for it to be reviewable, I just know I have a feeling that it would end up the same way as the pass interference reviews, and just if we get to that point where they're just reviewing it but sticking with the call on the field every single time, that doesn't benefit anyone.
Yeah, well, college football reviews targeting.
Yeah.
And I think that has been executed well because you have a safety aspect to it and they just want to get it right. And it has not ruined the game or anything like that. But regardless of that, at some point you got to let them play football.
Mm-hmm.
But let's get into it. Let's go. You want to go offense first?
Yeah, sure.
and just what did you think overall of the offensive performance in this game?
So, obviously, the Travis Kelsey and 15 and 87 had a day, as they tend to do about 10 times a year. Just go out and win a game for the Chiefs, and it. This is the lowest receiving output in any game for a player that had 4 touchdowns ever, and it was by about 70 yards because I mean, if you told the Raiders before the game that they would hold Travis Kelsey to 7 catches for 25 yards, they would have taken that 1,000 times.
You feel like maybe a Jody Fortson coached up Trav a little bit, and
Yeah.
instead he sits him down. He goes, Travis, I know you've been doing this a while. You've had some success, but all that middle of the field stuff is kind of a waste of time. Personally, I'm just here for the touchdown.
Yeah.
Just catch a lot of touchdowns.
Yeah.
On like 70% of your receptions should be touchdowns, like mine.
Hmm.
And old Killer Trav's like,
It's a good idea. Yeah. I like that one. But yeah, it is just I mean, that kind of red zone dominance from a Hall of Fame player, you
this,
never get tired of seeing it.
this is going to sound familiar when we talk about Devontae Adams, but at some point, as a Raiders coach or player, I would think like, okay, they're in the red zone. Let's cover Travis Kelsey.
Right.
Now, one of them was a great play where he catches the ball and there's 4 guys between Kelsey and the end zone. He just kind of slowly, methodically runs past them all.
Stiff-armed all of them, but
And then on that play, we talked about too that McCole Hardman didn't get credit for holding a block for like 5 seconds on the goal line and then throwing the guy on the ground.
right, yeah, and I guess I'll go there next. Is I've been as big of a McCole Hardman critic as anyone. I think Chiefs fans as a whole have been a little bit disappointed with his production. Not necessarily his production, I think, has been fine. Just the way it's looked. I think we've expected more deep shots, more intermediate routes, things like that, and it just hasn't really worked for him that way. But he had a strong day on offense. I think it was 5 touches for 80 total yards, and what it really was a really impressive play to help Kelsey get into the end zone.
And he's a player who's been here for a few years. Was a high draft pick. He's made some plays for the team. They brought in new guys, and they're not really targeting McCole Hardman very much. And you could see a scenario where he's in a contract year trying to make that first really big NFL paycheck because you don't know how long your career is going to be. You could be a little bit of a me first guy. You could be pouting or throwing a fit. But you see Kelsey catches 4th touchdown, and first guy there celebrating is McCole, who threw the big block for him on, I believe, the 2nd touchdown. And so credit to that guy for coming in after hurting his heel on a big 3rd down conversion.
Yeah, and
which was very critical, like 3rd and 17.
yeah, and he was after that play, he was clearly in pain, and and he's talked about it. It's just kind of a pain management thing, but to go out there, like you said, just you're gutting through an injury for a team that for a lot of NFL receivers who get tagged with that diva mentality, they would look at that and say, for a team that doesn't value you, and
So maybe he's not the player we hoped he was, but he had a good day.
yeah, definitely.
Now, when we looked at this game, we always do our rewatch right before we record this recap show. And my memory was Chiefs offense started slow. We got in the big hole, but it really didn't play out that way. So the first drive, you have a third down play. Wiley gets beat. Mahomes gets sacked. We have to punt. That's one play. That's not the offense was bad in the first half, because the very next drive was a nice length of the field drive. We missed a short field goal. That's not on the offense.
Yeah.
And then they scored 6 consecutive drives after that, 5 touchdowns and a field goal.
And my only complaint on that second drive had been going really well, and then we get to I don't remember what the 1st and 10 play was, but I know so it was 2nd and 10 in the high red zone, and the Raiders bring a lot of pressure. And Mahomes, I don't know if it caught him off guard. They weren't expecting pressure, but he kind of just lofted it up, gave Juju a chance at it, didn't come down with it. That's fine. 3rd and 10, live to play another down. And we get a screen call in the high red zone there on 3rd and 10, and we didn't even execute it well enough to get it completed. It was I was very frustrated by that. I just feel like that was kind of a throwaway call, like let's just kick it here. But
Those are the kind of plays where it's easy to criticize when it doesn't work, but we've seen some
that's
big plays break out of that.
that is
You know,
true.
that's the kind of play that the Chargers run and the ball's in the air and you see Eckler and you're like, "Oh yeah, we got this stopped." And then it's a touchdown.
Right.
So,
There is that.
but they didn't execute that play. So, but they were stopped twice in the and had to settle for field goals and really a third time, but it wasn't as much of an offensive slow start as I thought. And
No,
overall, I felt like the offensive line struggled in the first half, but it felt like they cleaned that up too.
yeah, and it's almost concerning for me that this is a couple of weeks now that the O line has struggled and then had to get a kick in the rear to get it going. But Mahomes post game mentioned that I think he said it was right before the half. He went to the O line and challenged them directly and told them that we're gonna win or lose this game because of you guys, and that they responded well to that, and the play reflects that in the second half. There was a much cleaner pockets, much more time in the pocket, and the offense flowed because of it.
Yep. So what we really saw struggle from the offense was offensive line. The pass rush was getting home in most of the first half, but they cleaned that up pretty well. Sometimes they were chipping, sometimes it's guys just doing a better job. And, the holes were not there in the run game. And Trey Smith is out and you've got Allegretti in his place.
Yeah, and I think that's a little piece of it. Trey Smith is a very, very good player, and maybe they weren't really wanting to do everything that they'd done so well last week against a better front in Tampa, but they were a lot of shotgun runs in this game that were just 1 yard in a cloud of dust, and they just kept going to it like we were averaging 6 or 7 on them.
Now, it's a really weird thing that last week we looked so good running the ball against a tough Tampa defense, and this Raiders defense I would have said wasn't as good, and we could not win the line of scrimmage. You've got one guy out. Something in the way this game was schemed or executed just was not there. We could not get anything going. But the only thing that felt weird to me was Pacheco looked so good last week. He only played 2 offensive snaps. Now, I know the theory of ride the hot hand, and McKinnon had a great run
Mm.
in a big spot,
This sparked the team, really.
but it seems odd to me that for Pacheco to not get any playing time at all.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that. I expected him to get more. I'm wondering maybe if some of that had to do with game script because, like, as much as we said the offense really didn't struggle throughout the game as much as it felt like they did, they were down 17-0, and I can see that being a situation where you don't necessarily want your 7th round rookie back out there as much as your veterans.
So I do like the idea of having a bunch of capable running backs and rotating them enough that everybody always has fresh legs.
Hmm.
So, it is what it is with the running game, but we're going to need to see a better control of the line of scrimmage against Buffalo.
And yeah, that is the case. And I'll say this, I just want to get it out of the way because I don't like saying nice things about the Raiders. I rarely have anything nice to say, but Max Crosby is not only is he a phenomenal player, but it really is one of the best stories in the sport of, what he's overcome with the substance abuse and the addiction, and they said he has a kid on the way now, and just I mean again, I don't like saying nice things about the Raiders, but if you're going to pick a guy to personify what is good about the Raiders and what they did for the league as it was establishing it, I think Max Crosby is a good guy for that.
And I think it's a great story. It really is. The only way it would almost be a uh, a Disney movie if he overcame addiction, started a family, and then got away from the Raiders franchise. That would be the icing on the cake of excellence. But yeah, Crosby's fantastic.
But that's the last nice thing we'll say about the Raiders today.
Yeah, and that Josh Jacobs is pretty good. Pretty good game, pretty tough to tackle, but that part of that's on our defense.
There was some
But
poor tackling, but I think this season so far, to me, is the best Josh Jacobs has looked since he was at Alabama.
the last thing on the offense is somehow we made it through that without saying that much about Mahomes, and he was nails today.
Oh yeah.
We saw the Mahomes that we're so accustomed to, and what we knew him for at the start of his career was just always on third down, just finding the. I mean,
Automatic.
he made some really clutch throws in this game.
Yeah, and it was like you said, kind of the flashback to a young Mahomes of it was third and longs and he's getting out of the pocket and making things happen. I know there was the 3rd and 15 to McColl that was, I'm not sure, but it kind of looked like it was a no look pass. And then there was a 3rd and 8 to McColl. And then there was a 3rd and long to Marquez as well. They were all out of structure, just gotta have it plays in the middle of that scoring run that the Chiefs went on.
Yeah, and a lot of it wasn't scrambling around for 10 seconds first. There was a lot of just getting the ball out to the right place at the right time. So great game from Mahomes.
As per usual.
And we're going to need another one of those next week.
Yeah.
But now let's talk about the defense. Overall, just you can't be happy with the scoring output that the Raiders got. But as we rewatch it and think about the way it came, some of it feels more fixable that they got so much on just a handful of deep shots. And the only concerning thing to me on the defense, you got two things basically, is we got to play the ball in the air better, and we didn't tackle well in the run game. So you want to start, I guess we'll start with the passing attack. That during this Andy Reid run, when the Chiefs have accomplished so much, since Spagnuolo's been here, it feels like we are really stubborn when we're playing a number one receiver. There are a handful, maybe 8 guys, 10 guys in the league who are true number one alpha receivers who cannot be covered with one guy unless the one guy covering them is also a true alpha. But Jamar Chase, nobody is taking him one-on-one, because if you go one-on-one, you can be in perfect position, put the ball up high, he goes and gets it. Like, Devontae Adams is that kind of player, and nothing is going to get Rashad Fenton to cover him one-on-one.
Yeah. And I was furious in the first half about how often they were letting not only Rashad Fenton, but even Jalen Watson just be left completely on an island with the best receiver in football. And it burned them just 3 times there in the first half. It burned them for 2 defensive pass interferences and then the deep touchdown. And in the second half, they went away from leaving those guys completely alone. They started shading the safety over the top towards him. He stopped hitting the big plays except for the one deep one,
So
which was a great throw by Derek Carr.
the way it feels to me with Sutton, it's like his philosophy, not Sutton.
We don't need to talk about Sutton. We do not need to talk about him.
Yeah, no Sutton. With Spagnuolo, it feels like the philosophy is that to execute our defense the way we want to, we've got to leave those guys one-on-one. Sometimes they'll get us, but we're executing our defense and we're winning all the other battles. And like Renfro didn't get anything, but with a guy like Jamar Chase, he can wreck your entire day.
Mm-hmm.
And we lost 2 games because we tried, we had a 4th and 20 something or 3rd and 20 something.
It was 3rd and 27.
And we were like one-on-one with Jamar Chase on the outside and play the rest of our defense. Their only shot there is a 28-yard throw, put the ball up and let him go get it.
Yeah.
They're going to do it. So it feels like we're a little bit stubborn on that, and we don't have that alpha guy to put on him right now.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a trait you'll find in a lot of good defensive coordinators is a tendency to be too stubborn. But at some point, you have to know if you're Steve Spagnuolo and you're looking across the field and you've got a pressure call on, and you see Rashad Fenton lined up on press man coverage with Devontae Adams, you can't let that happen.
So I want to see Fenton go to the bench. I want to see Joshua Williams, because what are we thinking? Maybe he'll do worse than Fenton did. Like, you can't do any worse. Put the young kid in there and see what he can do, because I didn't see tackling, and I didn't see any coverage, and I didn't see any ball skills. So what is he doing?
So hopefully, again, we got the report early last week that they were hopeful McDuffie would be back for this Buffalo game. It, by all indications, you don't know because it's Steve Spagnuolo and sometimes he hates playing rookies, but after that first long touchdown on Fenton, you started, not all the time, but you started just a little bit to see them actually move Jalen Watson around to follow Devontae Adams instead of letting Fenton have him. So that tells me a little bit that when McDuffie comes back, if it's this week, hopefully it's this week, it will be Fenton to the bench and not Watson.
What I'm hoping is we're all kind of, I think, sitting on the fence waiting to see, is Jalen Watson a legitimate plus defender at the NFL level? Because he's looked pretty decent. He made a couple of great plays, but in this game, you saw him a couple times not play the ball in the air. So if he can fix that and play that ball in the air, I've seen a lot of corners that were always in position but never got their heads around and played the ball in the air.
That's what I was going to say is I genuinely, so far this season, I don't remember a time that he got beat where he wasn't in position to at least compete and battle and try to play the ball or in position to, you know, make a play of some kind.
So
He's close, but like you said, he's got to get better playing the ball in the air. And he's a 7th-round rookie, in his 5th game.
what the feeling you had watching this game, is that we're just getting brutalized. But really, Carr's not sitting there picking the secondary apart. They hit a few deep shots. They got a couple pass interference penalties. But they weren't just picking us apart up and down the field. Renfrow did nothing until the very end. Adams only caught 3 balls. It wasn't like the secondary was completely blown. We just got to clean that up. So now let's talk. Before we even get into generalizing about the running game, I really felt like the Raiders came out with more intensity in the first few minutes. When you've got a couple of plays that looked like we had them stopped, and then the biggest one, the play before the first shot to Adams, the play before, you've got, I don't even remember who the receiver was.
Brandon Bolden.
He catches the ball, 5 Chiefs around him. They've got him wrapped up. It's going to be 4th and 6 or 7 behind midfield. They're going to punt. We stopped on the play because we felt like we had him.
And then you get 3 linemen come in and push the play for an extra 7.
And
get it to 4th and 1, and then you know what happens.
That was about the 3rd play out of the first 7 plays where I was like, wow, the Raiders worked harder on that play than we did.
And a lot of that comes down to the Raiders were a desperate team in this game. You come into that 1-3, having already lost a divisional game to the Chargers. This was a must-win game for the Raiders. I mean, I don't think anyone's saying their season's over, but it's getting close at 1-4 with this division in front of you and a stacked AFC. That was a Raiders team that had to come out and throw the first punch, and they did.
So we had Adams doing his thing, being elite, and I think we needed to make a change a little earlier. We had a little bit of an intensity issue at the beginning, and then we had some tackling problems.
Mhm.
And actually, you're the one who pointed out before we did the rewatch, but Thornhill, his tackling was really bad in this
Yeah.
game.
He had 2 plays, back-to-back consecutive plays where the Chiefs were kind of playing a too high safety look, and the Raiders ran the ball towards his side of the field. He's coming down in a what was really a pretty good run fit. Like was in position to make the play, but just kind of threw his shoulder into the thigh hip area of Jacobs, and it wasn't close to getting it done either time.
I feel like we have three good safeties. Thornhill's your best ball hawk, probably, but Reed and Cook are much more willing tacklers at this point, and Thornhill cannot turn into Tyrann Mathieu. We don't need a guy with skills who doesn't want to tackle. And I'm not saying he's there, but we saw a few lazy attempts
And
on in this game.
the clarification there I will make is Thornhill was not making business decisions like Tyrann Mathieu was last year. He is throwing himself at the runner. He is like that's arguably that's a better way to get injured by just throwing your shoulder into him than, going low and wrapping up whatever it is. But speaking of Tyrann Mathieu and business decisions, Justin Reed is not that. And there was a play, it was a chunk play. I think it was a 20 plus yard run by Josh Jacobs where at the end of that, you've got one on one, 20 yards down the field with a safety. And you said it, that with Tyron, he may eventually make that play, but he's probably running side by side with Jacobs for another 20 yards, kind of slapping each other in the face, trying to poke the ball out, dragging him down by the jersey.
I hope someone catches up to us in a minute.
Right. And Justin Reed, that's probably a play you'll see on Josh Jacobs' highlight reel because he trucked him. He ran him over. But Justin Reed stood strong, made the hit, took the contact and made the tackle. Could have saved a touchdown potentially.
So, one guy that didn't have any tackling problems is Nick Bolton. And also, I'm going to say Harris. If we didn't have Willie Gay on the linebacker on the roster, I would say that we've got a couple of good young linebackers in Harris and Bolton.
Yeah, he's playing well. He really
But
is.
he's not Willie Gay. Willie's on another level, but Harris has he's softened the blow of losing Gay.
He is the leading tackler in the game and had a massive sack late in the third quarter, I believe.
Yep.
It may have been early fourth quarter.
Another guy, Frank Clark. I remember him making plays, but on the rewatch, he made a lot of plays in the first half. Looked really good.
Before leaving with that, I would assume is that same kind of stomach bug issue that it's been a reoccurring problem for him as long as he's been in Kansas City. Whatever it is, I hope he's all right and get him back this week.
Yep. And
But on that note, Frank Clark and George Karlaftis split a sack, so Karlaftis is in the stat book with a half sack.
yeah, Karloftis had some good pressures. He had the half sack. He looked like he would have got another sack on the play that Harris actually got the sack on, and he was held pretty bad on a play where he flushed Carr out. So Karloftis is looking pretty good. Chris Jones is an absolute game wrecker. Every game, all the time. And I think Colin Saunders looks excellent.
Yeah, he keeps flashing and primarily in the run in this game. I don't remember him getting any pressures, but he He is proving to be a serviceable player, definitely.
So they lost Wharton in this game, who is a pass rushing interior lineman, and they're going to have to find who's going to take those snaps.
Hmm. In this particular game, it was Malik Herring who got a lot of run, actually, partially because Frank Clark didn't return in the second half. I don't know that I saw him flash in any way. Not that he was, a problem out there, but I don't know. I don't think he made any plays really.
I could be off base because I haven't heard anyone else say this, but when Karloftis was drafted, I wondered if he could be someone who came inside to rush the passer on third down situations because he's not as much of a speed around the edge guy. He's more of a power rusher.
I don't know if you noticed, but on the last drive of the game, that's exactly what they were doing. They had him lined up almost directly over the guard center and were putting Chris Jones and Dunlap on the edges.
I had wondered, so I didn't notice that, but I had wondered if you might see a lineup that was Clark, Jones, Karloftis, Dunlap on obvious passing
Yeah,
downs.
we will. I'm sure that will be kind of like a late season wrinkle, what they call the NASCAR package. We get like five DNs on the field and just your ultimate pass rush lineup. You can bring a lot of pressure out of that, but
So what we've seen from the first most of the season, I would say the defense has overachieved what I thought they would. And this game was a little bit of a defensive letdown,
mhm,
but kind of losing track of how many guys are missing right now.
yeah,
You've got a number one corner, you've got maybe your second or third best defensive player at middle linebacker. Then you've got
might,
Dana
yep.
is out.
Who is a strong run defender and a good rotational edge?
Yep, they've lost Wharton. They've been playing without a lot of guys, and they've actually had two of their five defensive ends were out this week with Kando and Dana.
Mm,
So they're getting it done with some guys missing,
mm-hmm.
and a couple of those guys are about to come back. And I think for this defense to be truly elite, the big unknown in this is McDuffie.
Mm-hmm.
If McDuffie is who we think he is, I think this can be an elite defense.
Yeah, and especially you hear all the time about how complex Steve Spagnuolo's defense is and how many different coverages he'll throw at quarterbacks. And there was some discussion I heard early in the season about how, relative to the last couple of years, with a defense that practically for the last 3 years was returning almost all the same guys every year, that in the early part of the season, the Chiefs were playing a lot of vanilla defense compared to years past. And people were saying, no, 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 just wait. Once these guys know what's going on, Steve Spagnuolo will get right back to doing what he's done his entire career. And that's just throwing everything in the book at you because he wants to keep you on your toes.
And you lost your big communicator out there in Matthew,
Hmm.
who was the energy, the spark plug, and the vocal leader of the defense. But I noticed a lot, and maybe he's telling him whether or not he likes onions on his sandwiches or not. But I noticed Bolton going around talking to a lot of people pre-snap, and it feels like because Nick Bolton is a fantastic tackler, but he's not a plus athlete really at the linebacker position as far as his 40 time and all that. He was not some plus athlete, but he's playing fantastic football and seems to be that kind of savvy player that is already in his second year is the vocal leader of the defense.
Like you said, he is taking on that vocal leadership role, and I think he's doing really well in it. And it is just, especially at the NFL level, we have a tendency to fall in love with traits and how fast the guy runs and how high he can jump and how hard he hits. And Nick Bolton may not be the best at any of those things. I mean, he can lay the wood, but he is an instinctive player and he just knows how to get to the football.
I feel like we are really strong. We're four deep at linebacker. because Chanel's starting to show up and
Yeah.
smack some guards,
He
make plays.
I think there were at least 2 or 3 plays I noticed that he, when he's in the game, more often than not, it's because the Chiefs are expecting a run at this stage in his career. And in those situations, if he's got free reign to just get downhill and get in somebody's face, he was blowing guys 3 yards off the ball just with one strong push. And that's really, really rare to see from any player in the NFL because all of these guys are big and strong and fast and athletic.
So let's talk late game decisions. So you got Kansas City up 7, 9 minutes left, going for 2. I felt like my immediate instinct, they hadn't even got the touchdown yet. I'm sitting there going, if you score here, you go for 2, make it a 2-possession game with 9 minutes left, you're going to win. And if you don't get it, it's back to 7. Your standard, we're up by a touchdown kind of situation. Seems that's me. I'm kind of aggressive in my decision making like that, but I didn't think they would do it. And then when they get the touchdown, I'm like, our kicker is having a hard time with extra point kicks and extra point length field goals. And I think that was part of it with Andy Reid kicking or going for 2 there.
It very well may have been, and I'm with you 100%. I want that. If any time you can go get a 2-point conversion to extend the game from a one possession game to a 2-possession game, I want to make that. I want to try and do that.
Now I have a criticism of this entire thought process with Kansas City going for 2. But first, let's talk about the Raiders making that same decision.
Yeah, I think there was some really good discourse about it because all 3 outcomes of the Raiders attempting that 2-point conversion directly impact how aggressive Kansas City was going to be with the ball with 4 minutes left in the game. Because if the Raiders get that 2-point conversion, then Kansas City effectively has 4 minutes of 4-down territory to go get points. And if I'm the Raiders coach, I do not feel comfortable with that scenario at all. So I'd rather almost kick the PAT and tie the game. And in that scenario, the Chiefs are going to be a little bit conservative. They don't want to turn it over, obviously, but they're still going to go try and score and win the game. What happened was they didn't get it, and you get a much more conservative Chiefs offense where the top priority is run clock and do not give the ball back.
Yep. So in that scenario, you can't hope that they score because you don't want to give up the lead. So I'm hoping we stop them. But in my mind, as they're lining up to go for 2, I say, it might be better if they get it because it's all about that mentality. The 4-minute offense mentality a lot of times leads to bad decision making, and it leads to you have an identity of who you are and how you play football. And now you say, oh, situation's changed. We're going to do something that we don't do and run the 4-minute offense. And we've actually seen some good success lately with the 4-minute offense, but I'd almost rather be down by 1 because down by 1, you're going for everything, you're aggressive, and we probably go get another touchdown.
The 4-minute offense is definitely the area where I feel least comfortable with the Chiefs offense, and I think that's for 2 reasons, and it's Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes both. I think the 4-minute offense is an area that just stylistically, the way you're going to play handicaps Patrick Mahomes. And I do not think historically that the 4-minute offense is Andy Reid's strongest play calling area. I think a lot over his tenure in Kansas City, we have seen this situation where you've got 5, 6, 4 minutes to kill, and we wind up giving the ball back with a minute left and a timeout to go get the lead, or whatever the situation is.
And from the Raiders' point of view, they say, no one thinks we're going to be here. We're in a spot where we can take the lead with not much football left. It seems like an obvious decision to them. Now, here's my issue with both teams going for 2. when you're going for two with 9 minutes left to try to make it a two possession game, what you're saying is that if we can get 2 yards here, we feel like we can end the game by going up 2 scores. Then 9 minutes later, when the game is actually almost over, you have a situation where you could have went for it and 2 yards ends the game and wins the game. And we saw the Chargers do that and fail and be criticized.
And
But
the week before that, the Chargers did the exact same thing and it worked. So back to back weeks where they were on both sides of that coin, they won both games, but
if you're going to say that we think we can end the game by going for 3 yards at the goal line, why can't we try to end the game going for three? But my biggest thing is you run the perfect play on first down. The little flip out to Sky Moore gets 8 yards, and you run the ball for a first down. You say, man, we do that one more time, we win this game. One more time, just like what we just did. And they do it. They execute the hard part of that. The hardest part of a 4-minute offense is getting more than 5 yards on first down so that now second and third down are winnable plays. And so they get it on first down, they get 8 yards, and then they try running the ball, and Max Crosby dives on the ground and trips Hilaire, and they lose a yard. But when you're at second and two, you say we have 3 plays to get 2 yards and we win the game. For me, that is 3 consecutive plays that are either runs or little flip passes, like the one we just did to Moore. Uh, a sweep with an option, where Mahomes can keep it or pitch it, or jet sweep to Hardman, or I'm running 3 consecutive plays that are guaranteed to not have a clock stoppage and try to get 2 yards. And if you know you're going to do that, that affects your third down play call where we tried. I don't think I don't like any scenario where 2 yards wins you the game and you throw the ball 17 yards. Now, once that play's been called and it's broke down and Pat says nothing's open and he decides to make that throw, that's not on that decision to make that throw, but the play call should have been something to me that hits quick and doesn't have much chance to lose yards because you can then go for it on fourth down.
yeah.
So the only time I was upset with the coaching staff, there were 2 points. Number one was not shifting help to Devontae Adams early enough, and the second point is when you get to second and two, all you need is that 2 yards. That's got to be 3 consecutive attempts at 2 yards.
And I've got some very different, but I've in the very same realm frustrations from that sequence. In that, my first one is we hear all this talk about how difficult it is, especially for rookie receivers, to learn the Andy Reid offense because you have to know all of the spots. You have to be able to run all of the routes from all of the spots, and you have to be able to read the defense the same way as the quarterback without any kind of communication. And I get all of that, but the Sky Moore was on the field a lot in this game, a lot more than he had been previously, and did not get a single target all the way up until that 4-minute offense where they threw 2 consecutive bubble screens to him. So there's a little bit of optimism there for me that it's not a trust issue. They like him. They think he can make plays. They went to him in a big moment, but like, why are we waiting until there's 2.5 minutes left in the game to throw him the ball? And then to your point about the second and two, if you're going to run that ball, which I think is the right call, I get under center and get Pacheco in the game or McKinnon, or even if it's Clyde, just get under center because what they did was the same second and short shotgun run they had been running all game with almost no success the entire game. I think they had one run from of that variety work, and it was McKinnon, and they ran it right at Crosby, who was the only guy who had been seriously disruptive all day. So it's like that play didn't really have a shot, it felt like.
I would have loved a Trey Burton run there.
Like Burton.
Yeah, good old Trey Burton. Michael Burton always picks up those plays. Do the inside dive to Burton on 2nd and 2, makes it 3rd and a half, or
hmm
force your way. 3 quarterback sneaks gets there.
Right.
Like, you've got to, if you want to be a championship team, you need to be able to convert that.
At the same time, and again, it almost cost them. But I think there's a little bit of that decision to punt that ball that is being made because you know who the quarterback on the other side is. And you have seen over the course of the last 10 years with Andy Reid how many times in big moments at Arrowhead Stadium Derek Carr has crumbled under the pressure. And it's been nearly every time.
And this time he didn't.
And this time he didn't.
Because Davante Adams makes that catch cleanly 99 times out of 100. He had just a hair of a bobble. I think by the letter of the law, that's an incomplete pass.
I agree.
And if he catches that ball, they win the game. Their kicker is Nails. He was in range at that point. Plenty of time left. They probably run the ball 2 more times. Like, that's it. That microscopic bobble and the 2 receivers running into each other had to happen for us to win that, which means that the fact we decided to punt there and still won, that part was lucky.
Yeah.
Overall, winning the game was not lucky because I think we got screwed over a couple times. That would have made a difference, but that part, we got lucky and it was the wrong decision to punt.
Small caveat there again. Not that it matters in the grand scheme of things. Like you said, they almost made the drive, but Tommy Townsend did have an excellent punt to put them at the 6-yard line. So, again, it almost didn't work, but you tell Andy Reid before the game, Derek Carr starting at his 6-yard line has a minute or 2 minutes and 1 timeout to go get a field goal. You don't love it because you want to win by more than that, but at the same time you're like, we've got a shot here. That game is not over. So
I've said 6 times maybe so far that they should have went for that. Well, they should have went for it. But 4-1, as a longtime Chiefs fan who's been through some 1-15, 2-14, 4-12, Herm Edwards, Romeo Crennel seasons, it feels like right now, we didn't play perfect against the Raiders. You might have a hard time putting us first instead of third in your power rankings or whatever. You've played 5 football games and you've won 4 of them. As a football fan, you need to take time to appreciate the fact that we're currently a first place team, and win or lose against the Bills, we're a Super Bowl contender.
And if we had a healthy Harrison Butker, we'd be 5-0.
Yep.
But that's neither here nor there. One thing I will say too, it's as much as it hasn't been a rivalry since Andy Reid got here, the Chiefs Raiders rivalry goes back to the beginning of the NFL. It's one of the most storied battles that there is. And it's the classic Marty Schottenheimer quote of all you got to do is keep it close because in the end, the Raiders are gonna Raider. And it's just like we always say about the Chargers. If you give them a chance to lose it, 9 times out of 10, they're gonna lose it. And that's what they did.
Yep. So, we appreciate you being here and watching the show. We'll be back in a couple of days for a preview of the most exciting game of the year, probably, with the Buffalo Bills.
Coming to town.
And doesn't get much better than this. So we appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time.